Welcome to Conversations in Social Care, a unique and refreshing podcast for the social care sector, brought to you from Care Talk. Well, it's fantastic to be back once again with another podcast of Conversations in Social Care. We've had the great and the good in care, and I'm delighted that a young lady is going to join us today who's very well known in care and very highly respected, and that's Karolina Gerlich, CEO of the Care Workers Charity. Hello, Karolina.
Hello, Steve. How are you today?
Very, very good. Lovely to see you once again. Although it's virtual today, it is still great to see you.
Great to see you too.
Now, most people in care do know who you are, Karolina, but for those who don't, you've had a very varied career which has taken you to where you are today. Tell us a little bit about that journey for those who don't know.
So for many years, I was a care worker doing mainly home care and live-in care, including full 4 years as a live-in care worker in the south of England. More recently, I was doing home care in London. A few years ago, I started with an organization called National Association of Care and Support Workers, where then I was a CEO on top of my care work. And as of March last year, I took on a role of leading the Care Workers Charity.
Excellent. And of course, throughout your various positions in care, you've continued to work as a care worker the more your career has progressed. What's been the motivation behind this? Because I think that's fantastic.
I just really enjoy working with people face to face, and I have never experienced a feeling of reward as much as I have when working with people and supporting their lives. Unfortunately, last year in October, I had to stop doing my care work. It was mainly due to COVID. But I hope that as things settle down with COVID and we know more what rules are in terms of people from outside organizations accessing care services, I'll be able to get back to it at least for a few hours a week.
And of course, because you have in effect been on the shop floor and you've done it sort of from the ground up, you know exactly what all the care workers go through. So if anybody ever comes to you with problems, issues, and they might say, well, you don't understand, you can say, well, actually.
Yeah, I think it really helps. My experience having worked, like you say, on the shop floor with people face to face, it helps in the work that we do supporting care workers with grants, but it also really helps when I'm campaigning for care workers as skilled professionals, for care workers as people who need respect and recognition, and of care workers as people who make a huge contribution both to individuals they support, but also to the society at large.
And of course, you work as an advisor for the Women's Equality Party. There still seems to be gender inequality in the workplace. This seems to be particularly apparent when we look at the CEOs of the larger care groups. Why do you think this is, and how can we challenge this?
I think as a society, we still have a lot of work to do around gender equality, especially access for women to higher roles, and how we interview, how we advertise for your roles. It's a part of it. With how gendered the workforce is, with over 80% of the workforce being women, I think it is extremely important that the representation in the leadership grows and grows into more equal balance between men and women.
And of course, having said that, there aren't that many CEOs, Karolina. Is there anything that's encouraged you to think that it is getting better in certain areas?
Oh, yes, definitely. When you look at people like Vic Rayner or Jane Townsend from NCF and UKHCA and Nadra Ahmed from NCA, we have leaders in the industry who are women, who speak on behalf for care providers or for other parts of the sector. So I think we're definitely getting there. Women are definitely represented. We just need to make sure that we improve on the proportion.
And of course, the three women that you've just named, they're absolutely superb at what they do. So as you say, hopefully it is going in the right direction.
Yeah.
Now, of course, like many women in the sector, you juggle childcare with the demands of your job. What more can the sector do to support working mums, especially those on doing frontline home care, so who work long, demanding hours?
I think in terms of frontline work, home care is very difficult to support the workers with childcare because obviously it is lone working. But I think where home care is good for that is flexibility of hours, where I know myself quite a lot of care workers who have school drop-offs to think about, where they're able to fit in their schedule within school hours. In care homes, I think one of the great ideas that I've seen were nurseries on the side of care homes, where employees could drop off their kids, if something happened, they were just next door, kind of intergenerational ideas of connecting very young children with older people and at the same time supporting the workforce with their childcare needs.
All right, I wasn't aware that you did have nurseries in some care places. That's brilliant. So do you think this would be a great thing going forward if there were more of these?
I think so. And, there's been some great research done around in the intergenerational work of children just spending time with older adults and how much it benefits both sides. So I think it has so many different benefits that hopefully we'll see more of it as the time goes.
Right, let's hope so. Now, the Care Workers Charity has never been more needed than it has in the last year for obvious reasons. Tell us a little bit about it. It must have been tough at the moment for your charity.
Yeah, I think in the ideal world, the Care Workers Charity wouldn't have to exist because care workers would get paid a wage that reflects the importance of the work that they do and the skills that are involved. And the government would recognize that, for example, during a pandemic, there shouldn't be such an issue when care workers had to self-isolate due to COVID. The only payment they were getting was statutory sick pay, which wasn't the case in the NHS, for example. So the need for us, I think for now, will continue. With the size of the workforce, we expect to support at least a couple of thousand of care workers each year. Last year, we paid out to over 3,200 care workers of over £2 million in grants, which is a huge amount of money. Stories that we get from people that apply for our grants are heartbreaking. We're talking about parents who have lost income, for example, due to COVID or due to other illness, and they're in terrible rent areas and they may be evicted. We're talking about single parents who can't feed their kids because all the bills and everything else is piling onto them. And even when people work full time, very unfortunately, the average pay that a care worker receives doesn't really cover the basics. And when you think about the importance of the work, what do care workers do? Care workers make other people's lives better. What is more important than that? Care workers support other people to live the lives they want to live. And if we don't recognize that, if we don't pay for that properly, I think we really need to look at ourselves as a society. The government needs to look at itself in terms of priorities and really have a good shake and say, right, this cannot continue. The workforce is the most important tool to delivering great quality of care. If the workforce isn't well, if the workforce isn't well paid, we can't achieve that. And hopefully with time, demand on the Care Workers Charity is going to reduce. But I think in the meantime, if anything, potentially may increase, especially like as some of the government schemes of furlough are going to end pretty soon, and that's going to have impact on families. So yes, we appreciate support from everybody that gives us money to pay to care workers, and people support us in many other ways. And I'd ask that support continues and increases as we try to help even more care workers.
Having hosted the Great British Care Awards, as you know, we've sort of tried and help the Care Workers Charity as much as we possibly can. So I've seen firsthand how brilliant the work is that you do. Obviously, you've touched on the fact that you've given grants to people and helped them financially. Are you finding more care workers now sort of need emotional support as well? Is that something you offer?
So at the beginning of this year, we started a new grant, which is wellbeing and mental health support, where people working in care can apply for up to 10 hours of one-to-one therapy. We know that mental health issues were a problem already before COVID. COVID's just made everything much worse in a difficult way. Obviously, still in crisis mode, care workers don't necessarily have the time or capacity to think about their own mental health or prioritize it over the work. But we know that mental health of the workforce is in a very bad place. Burnout levels are very high. People are leaving the sector because they can't carry on anymore with the pressure that's been put on them, with the constantly changing guidance, with some requests that some people deem unfair as well, that are particular to social care. So yes, I think mental health of the workforce is definitely at huge risk, and we try to support it through our grant stream.
There was a friend of mine, Karolina, a while back. I was telling him about the care sector because obviously, as you know, I host quite a few events within the care sector. And I was telling him about the sort of stresses and strains that they've been going through, particularly in the last 18 months or so. And he said something to me which sort of blew me away. And I thought it's so true. And he said, who cares for the carers? And I thought that really is so true, isn't it?
It is. I think there are some great provider organizations within the sector that look after the teams very well, obviously within the limitations. There are some that should do much more than they are. I think the main issue we have that care workers don't necessarily have a sense of belonging, maybe beyond the employer that they work for. And that sometimes it's even difficult because social care workforce isn't a registered workforce, as in care workers aren't. They're not recognized as skilled. Immigration policy specifically talks about care workers as unskilled. When you talk about people as unskilled, that makes them feel unworthy. And it makes it very difficult for people to feel looked after if they're made to feel unworthy. The lack of parity. Yeah. And the lack of parity of esteem between health and social care really makes things worse. You know, I've seen on online groups for care workers recently, I've seen quite a lot, both managers and care workers leaving, saying off they go to the NHS, which is usually where they go. Working conditions are better, pay are better, and they're not going to be forced, for example, to do things they don't want to do necessarily. So it is very difficult to care for care workers just as one charity. We are limited in what we can do because we are, you know, by the funding that we get. We work very hard to access as much funding as possible, but I think more work needs to be done both by the sector, but mainly by the national government and the society in terms of recognizing, appreciating, and respecting what care workers do, how important that is, and that one day any of us may need that support.
And you just touched on there, Karolina, the difference between sort of pay for care workers and pay for NHS people. Do you think that can do you think that's going to cause staffing issues further down the line?
Oh, it's caused staffing issues for a long time already. You know, it's been an ongoing issue because NHS can offer a much better pay and promotion system, much more secure working hours, and more support in other forms, that people do go towards the NHS. That I think still too many people perceive roles in social care as a stepping stones towards NHS, towards nursing degrees, for example, because we still haven't managed to make social care an attractive career in its own right that isn't just as a stepping stone to something else. And that's the main change that we have to make. We have to make sure that young people leaving schools perceive social care as an industry they want to go to when they leave school, and they want to remain for the rest of their careers.
So what you're basically saying is we need to improve the public perception, status, and image of social care.
Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. You've been a great supporter of the Great British Care Awards. I've met you there many, many times, which pay tribute, obviously, to frontline care and support workers. Now, I know you've given up a lot of your time to judge there, Karolina. What motivates you to do this?
I've said to Lisa in the past that judging for the awards is like one of the best days of the year for me. What I get to do is sit there and listen to all these amazing stories of people who go the extra mile, who are really passionate and enthusiastic and caring, who live for making other people's lives better. And I just leave, you know, with, I don't know, with elated, with a feeling of, you know, like I've just experienced something amazing, humbled by what people do, what people are prepared to do to support others. And yeah, it always puts me in an absolutely great mood. It's a great day. Yeah.
Likewise, for me, when I host them, I'm exactly the same as you. I hear the stories of people going above and beyond, and it really does inspire you. You just think these people are incredible. Speaking of incredible, I have to say, without you being too modest, because you're not that kind of lady, you've received many accolades yourself in your time, and you've recently been nominated for Care Talk's Social Care Top 30, so congratulations on that. Why do you think it's important to celebrate and recognise leadership as well as the frontline workforce?
I think leadership plays a very important role in social care. We need to lead by example of kindness, empathy, and compassion, at times sacrifice, to make sure that people who work at the front line don't think it's just them that have to do those things, that they know that people who lead them, who talk about them, who talk to them, have the same passion. During the first few months of the pandemic, so many people in the sector, everybody in the sector really, all of the managers, deputies, business owners, people leading NCF, UKHCA, Care England, etc. They all worked 7 days a week. We did at the charity as well, many weeks, to make sure that we could support the frontline workers as much as we could. There is no other way. If you have people doing amazing work, you have to be there with them so they understand that it's important to you as well. I think we've got great leadership in the sector in many places. I think what we need more of is promoting career progressions for people who started working with people who draw on care services face-to-face, and giving them opportunities to progress, but not only into managerial roles, because many people are not interested in that. That's just one of the routes. We're finding a way to create specialist paths in social care, where somebody's experience and years served are rewarded both in pay and in their title. And they are recognized, like we recognize in any other industry, that if somebody works in a certain role for 20 years, they are the expert. Unfortunately, at the moment, if you have a care worker who's worked with people face-to-face for 20 years, it is often perceived as a lack of ambition or a lack of skill. That kind of attitude, I have to say, makes me very angry. It's a choice. It's often a choice to stay there, because that's where you find yourself the most useful to people. And that's where you find the work most rewarding. We need to finally recognize and reward that.
Definitely. Now, of course, hopefully we are coming through COVID now, Karolina. Hopefully we've passed through the worst time, fingers crossed. What key lessons would you say we can take from this challenging time? And can you see any other challenges going forward as we move into a new era?
I think main lesson that we need to learn from COVID is that there really needs to be parity of the steam between NHS and social care. And we cannot afford in the future to ever again use social care as a dumping ground for the NHS without supporting social care. That's the most important lesson. The second lesson is you cannot put the workforce through the most horrific things without supporting it both financially, psychologically, but also with the equipment that they need. And I know at the beginning of the pandemic, that was very difficult, but what I'm talking about in this case is prioritizing sending PPE, for example, to the NHS over social care. Third lesson, I think that we learned from examples like care workers not being able to access special shopping hours, is that having an oversight, a body where care workers can belong, a professional body that will both hold care workers to certain standards, but most of all give them the support and sense of belonging that they need, would really help in many future activities, talking from testing, like I say, to accessing special shopping hours, to vaccinations. And it's definitely something worth thinking about. In terms of challenges in the future, I think what we have seen and what we're experiencing right now is what many people call the worst recruitment crisis they have ever seen in social care. And I worry that the problem is going to continue, because right now, social care to the outsider, to somebody who hasn't experienced the reward of supporting somebody, is very difficult to understand as a valid and attractive employment option, because of low pay, because lack of recognition, lack of professionalization and public perception. And I think our job is now harder than it has ever been, because of piles on negative media coverage, especially in the last few months, especially around care homes. There's a lot of very hard work to be done to change people's perception and attract more people to work in social care, because we're only going to need more people, not fewer.
Yeah, definitely. Now, obviously, you're such a busy lady. I doubt you do get much spare time, but as a lady, as opposed to the dedicated care professional, how would you normally relax in your spare time under normal times?
I really like reading, but my main obsession that's definitely become much worse since the pandemic are houseplants.
All right.
I have over 100 in different parts of the house. Fingers crossed at the moment they're still alive. Every now and then they get some bugs that I have to deal with. But yeah, houseplants are my way to relax.
So your house is a bit like Kew Gardens at the moment.
Well, I wish it was as big as Kew Gardens and I had as many plants, but it's definitely on the jungle looking side. Yeah.
And when we do get back to normality, whatever that may be, Karolina, what are you looking forward to the most?
I'm really looking forward to reconnecting with people in conversations. I'm really looking forward to being able to hug more people. I'm a hugger. And I'm really looking forward to being able to have more conversations with people in my neighborhood where we're not very careful how to behave, because I feel in the last 15 months, we've lost a little bit of this body language ability around people. Yeah. Many of us doing Zoom calls a lot of the time. So I think the main thing is just reconnecting with people, being able to speak to people face to face. Digital technology is great, it's definitely served us well during the pandemic, but I have to say at my best with people face to face.
Yeah, totally agree with that, because obviously I've been doing online and sort of virtual stuff for the last 15 or 16 months. And when I went to do the Care Awards last week, it was strange when people actually give you a round of applause and they're there, right? It's odd after having done it for so many years. Now, I know we'd all love a magic wand, Karolina. If somebody was to hand you a magic wand and said, there you go, Karolina, what 3 wishes would you grant for social care?
To professionalize the workforce and pay it well as one thing. For people who draw on social care to have enough resources to draw on to really live the lives they want to live. And for social care to finally be recognized as the career of choice, that we can teach our children when they're at school, you want to be a carer. You should be a carer. You should be a care worker, and that's what you should aspire to do, because there is no more important job in the world.
Excellent. 3 very clear, concise answers there, Karolina. You knew what you were going to say. That's brilliant. Can I just say it's been an absolute pleasure talking to you, Karolina, and I look forward to seeing you at the Social Care Top 30.
Thank you very much. Have a lovely afternoon.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Our next guest will be announced very soon, so keep an eye on our social media. A reminder that the link to nominate for the Social Care Top 30 is in the podcast description.